Associate Dean Keith Hirokawa. We are visited today by Professor Rob Heverly at Albany Law School, who specializes in emerging legal issues of technology, among other things. Today, Rob has visited us so we can hear and learn about what's referred to as the quantum internet, something not many people know a lot about. Rob, just for the basics, what is quantum internet? What does that refer to?
So the quantum internet is an attempt to take the technology that's being built now and being used by a variety of companies and entities. It's called quantum computing. When you have a computer like what we're using, what's going back and forth between us is zeros and ones. It's binary. And so everything is represented in that way at the most basic level. And then like Zoom does what it needs to interact with the hardware, take those zeros and ones, turn them into pictures and audio. There are limitations to what you can do with that based on the bandwidth you have. We've seen lots of those when it came to Zoom, when the pandemic kicked in and everybody was having all sorts of bandwidth problems. During that first time when everybody was remote, if my kids were home and online, when I had to teach, we had blackouts in the internet because it would fall off. We see a bunch of those kinds of things. It's true too for computing itself that we use those zeros and ones at the most basic level. So when everybody writes a program, it gets what's called compiled into object code, which is zeros and ones. And if you were to print that out, it would be zeros and ones. Nobody reads that. Well, some people do, but nobody really reads that. So the quantum internet takes and uses a thing called superposition and entanglement, which already we're in physics, right? And allows that you can have a 0 and a 1 and something that's both a 0 and a 1 at the same time. And that change allows for a significant increase in the amount of computing power that can be used in a certain way. And so the biggest changes that will come from it, it's kind of funny because when I first started getting interested in this, I got some of the sort of like basic quantum computing, quantum networking. And I'm like, oh, good, this will be like Quantum Networking for Dummies book. And I would open it and there'd be like, you know, the normal half page of the first chapter, and then you turn the page and be filled with formulas. And I'm like, okay, this is not an introduction to anything. This is physics, and I'm going to close this now.
Right.
But the idea is, what I'm trying to do when I think about this stuff is figure out what is it going to make possible and how will that change things? So what are the outcomes? So it's kind of crazy.
So, so this sounds, and I apologize for my ignorance, but I heard you use the word super, and I'm thinking a supercharged internet. Are we going to see noticeable differences, or will the differences really be ones that experts and tech-savvy folks will understand?
Well, and that's sort of where we're getting, and the interesting piece of it is that as we try to use the quantum computing for quantum networking, we're doing things like entangling photons and the spin of things in physics to try to get more power out of what it is that we're doing. One of the things that we can really do well with that is secure communications. Because what happens is when you entangle the two particles, which are called qubits, if something happens to the message as it's being transmitted, you know. And it's just, we can't think of a way to get by that. So the security that would be provided, this would be fantastic. Part of the problem with this is that the quantum computing, not the networking stuff so much, but the computing part is also so strong that we can break all of essentially the encryption that we have right now. So you go to your bank account online, would no longer necessarily be secure because the power of the computer to make the calculations that are necessary will just expand exponentially or beyond exponentially. They won't even really be comparable. What are we going to do with it when it comes to like quantum networking and quantum internet? We don't really know yet. So the scientists are working on trying to get it to be reliable and consistent, and then trying to work out how the applications, the way that we use it, will function in relation to it, how it will relate to the existing internet. Will it interconnect? Will it be on top? Will it replace? We don't really know yet. And there are some fundamental physics problems. If if you want to send these signals for any distance, you need a super cooled, like in Kelvin numbers, repeater. You can't just
Okay.
have those like on the corner, like with the electric light pole, right? It doesn't work that way. So they have some problems, some technical problems they're working on. They're having some success. But through it all, we're not really sure what everything's going to be. But we weren't with the internet either.
Right.
And the engineers who developed the internet knew they had one kind of goal in mind. We just want a network that anything that needs to communicate can communicate. And then they came up with email so that they could communicate more easily. And suddenly everybody wanted email. And they were like, really? Everybody wants this? So I expect similar things to happen in quantum networking.
So with great power comes great responsibility is what I think we're hoping for here. Yeah, so that's interesting. Well, now I want to offer my congratulations here. We know that you've been awarded a fellowship with the Center for Quantum Networking. Very excited about it. Can you tell us about the kind of work you'll be doing there?
Well, part of what's really exciting about that is they added for one of the first times, as I understand it, I haven't checked the veracity of this, but as I understand it, one of the first times that societal impacts has been included in an NSF grant.
Oh.
We have media people, communications people, sociological people, and there's a group that started over the last year, and then in 2022, there's a new group of fellows. And part of what's awesome about it is we're fully integrated into the grant. So when I went to the first workshop, the first 3 sets of presentations were all technical. So here's the technical problem we're trying to deal with, and we use this Harvard to MIT loop to send these signals, and this is the thing that we're trying to work on, and what do we need to do next? And you guys over there who are working on this theoretical piece, you need to finish that so we can figure out how to implement it. And of course, I'm sitting there going, okay,
cool.
Cool. But I can get out of that sort of where they're aiming and where they're trying to go. Yeah. And then I was given, as well as the other fellows, a platform to say, here's the work that I'm planning on doing and why it might be important to you. And I think that's critically important because I was talking to another physicist who's local here in the area for something completely unrelated. I was just helping him with a problem he had. And at the end, I told him about this. I said, I'm playing in your playground. I'm doing a little quantum stuff. And he's like, what does law have to do with quantum computing and quantum networking? I'm like, oh my God, everything, right? How can it not? So I get a chance to get in there and say, hey, this is something you guys might not be thinking about because you're so excited about whether or not you can use this new way of transmitting. But you know what happened last time we did something like this? The government stepped in and said they want to be able to eavesdrop. What are you going to do if they do that?
Yeah.
So
that's good stuff. Yeah, it's a comprehensive approach is always the wiser one. Definitely. Even if lawyers aren't the most important person in that room, they sure are going to play a role.
Yep.
So thank you, Professor Heverly. As always, what a pleasure to hear about the stuff you're working on. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for having me.